You gotta.
Dude, how is this exercise and torturing yourself with bad TV been?
Oh my god, dude, today was so bad. This one. This was like, where do you think it ranks in terms of the first four?
I think it's the best of the first four.
You think it's the best one? I think it's closer to the bottom for me.
Really? Even worse than the pilot?
Oh, well, that's a good point. But honestly, there has not been a wide spectrum of quality in my eyes.
This one, what's this one called? Good Old Jane?
Yeah, Sweet Jane. Like
Sweet Jane.
Yeah.
I think the first 3 episodes we've had a lot of questions about what the hell Jane is supposedly about and what her character means.
But I feel like this episode didn't really answer it. Like, I guess she's just I guess they're just committing to her being the straight woman, she's the only sane one.
Right.
If who knows, I feel like it might go back on its word next week.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of funny, like, weird stuff. There's things in this one that I like, but
there were lines in this, obviously Lou lines, but there was lines in this where I was like, that's you're a good writer,
Yeah.
You don't write that by accident. Clearly you know what jokes are, you know what you're doing,
Thank God they know what jokes are, because that would be...
Oh,
I wouldn't be surprised at this point. It's been like every week I sit down and I go, oh, great, I gotta watch this fucking show again.
Yeah. There's no anticipation, there's no expectation that it'll suddenly be great, It just seems very stagnant. But I think a lack of character specificity is the thing that's harming it ultimately. Because Lou's kind of the only developed character, or like the archetype. I get it, and so then the generating material for him is easier, I think. Whereas someone like Motif, who's in plotline this episode is just he's watching Friends. That's his subplot.
That's Motif's plot.
Which, first of all, I mean, don't remind us of a show that has actual chemistry, Like, shit
that's a great point.
Shit on Friends all you want. Those characters, you believe they were friends. At this point, John goes, remember sophomore year? And I was like, you guys have known each other since college? You've known it for like a decade? What?
Motif's character is so funny to me too, because I'm a comic and like I know black people. I don't know what this is supposed to be.
Well, that's right, because like you at one level you think they're doing like a black people don't know what Friends are bit, which sure, like I've seen that before, but you can do that. You're just characterizing them as like stereotypical black comic. Fine. But then like the end of it is he gets really into Friends and he's like a kid and he's like, Mulaney, do you think they were really friends? And it's like, is he just like an idiot? Like, is that the character? Like, what are the levels we're playing at here?
Yeah. This show, every time something happens that makes me like furl my brow a little bit, I'm like, this is like the last show that was able to do anything like this. Like, this is the most 2014 show of all time. Because it was
I feel like it's the thing of, if you want to see what an era actually was like, don't watch or listen to the best movies or music, watch to the worst ones, because that's because that still made it to air. So it means that it's representative of everything.
Right, like this is what they thought people would like. It's not what people actually ended up attaching themselves to.
Yeah.
Like this show's so funny to me because it like sits like 2 years before the Trump stuff started, where like all comedy was either like a commentary on Trump or like all like late night stuff. Not all of it, but obviously it was all like a reactionary period for art.
Right, on both sides, because like then you also got the people who were like mad at the left for being too woke. So then you have like the kind of the cultural backlash of like being using gay as a punchline.
Right. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Truly fundamental next generation. Yeah. Voice of my generation.
Yep. Voice of the guy in a Hooters shirt, Shane Gillis. But
dude, like Louis J. Gomez on like Legion of Skanks after Shane hosted SNL being like, yeah, he's the first guy to ever say gay in his monologue. I'm like, what? mean anything.
But also, it's like it just shows how little they know about like just comedy and SNL in general. Because it's like, you know, in the '90s, even in the set, like they were just saying slurs. That was the joke, like on sketches, not the host.
Jimmy Fallon did blackface.
Yeah, like, so no, I guarantee you he's not the first person who said gay.
Half of the most famous characters from SNL are men dressed as women.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're not playing around in certain
Their
spaces.
most famous sketch in the 70s was them just saying cheeseburger a lot, and the joke is that they're Greek. Like, you know, those Greek diner owners, that's really funny.
And the Belushi just played a Japanese guy. Like,
right, yeah, he was a samurai. Like,
yeah,
the joke
funny
is him doing
again.
Japanese. Yeah.
Come on, man. What, to the 70s? Like, it wasn't even really jokes.
Right. Well, no, that's what I mean. I am not I've said this to you before, but it's like, I'm not a believer things get better, but I am a strong proponent that nothing was ever good.
That's a good philosophy. That'll never let you down.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think because anytime you investigate something, it's like, oh, look, this obscure music artist, why did he have such a middling career? Google, Wikipedia, rape charge, sexual assault. Like, oh, no.
Before he was even famous, too. It's like, he had done one gig in a record label, and he was like, time to get raping, you know? And you're like, Jesus, man.
It's like
Diddy had an empire.
Exactly. It's like priests with like the molestation thing. It's like, were you going to do this so you became a priest, or was becoming a priest what made you feel like you... Like, what, the chicken or the egg thing with priests and molesting kids.
It's funny you bring that up, because Spotlight has been the movie I've been just, like, drunkenly coming home and watching for the past couple of weeks.
Dude, I just rewatched Spotlight, like, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. It's in the air.
Something's going on.
Journalism, not pedophilia.
All right, let's go through the plot here.
Okay, so we open up Ocean's 8's famous bit. You know?
I think it's a great bit. It's fun. Yeah. It works well. It's funny.
It works well. I mean, people... I remember some TV writer, like, reviewer, being mad on Twitter during the promos for it, because that was just the only... that was a joke they used in all the teasers for Mulaney, was the Ocean's 11 one. And she was like, the one joke that they're using is the one where he's, like, anti-women. And I was like, yeah, but it is his most famous, like, at the time, not most famous, but it was one of the more well-known ones, which he then said he regrets doing because they made an Ocean's 11 with women, but it's also just like, whatever, like, that's not what it was about, like,
no,
who cares?
No. It's literally setting up the plot of, like, your girlfriends don't like your girl friends, like, they don't get along, which is the whole plot of this episode.
Right, it's the first episode where the John's jokes that have existed before this have direct connection to... It doesn't just feel like they're grabbing out of a hat and it's like, he says body in this, and this one is kind of about body, so we have to put it together.
Right, yeah, and, like, it's also not like that pilot where they're just reenacting a story he tells, which is lame. I think it's like, okay, I think this is...
Well, there's an actual situation you can put into it,
Yeah, I think that this is a fine idea. I think it's good or whatever. My first thought after this, after the intro was playing on this show, is like, this show feels like a consolation prize for doing a good job at SNL. Yes. Like, he just kind of got it in a gift bag. John Mulaney in this show, like, even though he feels like an industry plant for someone who's insanely talented and doesn't need to be planted. Like,
exactly. But he's planted in a garden that he has no business being in.
No. And that's like the whole problem that we keep coming back to, is like, what? Why are you doing this kind of show?
What is this show? Because there's no... Yeah, in this one, there's nothing... It doesn't seem like it was interesting that you brought up last week about how he was trying to be weird with like are ghosts real, like am I just crazy or something? But in this one again, it just seems like there's no even attempts at subversion. They're just playing everything straight. But everyone, it's still kind of muddled because the characters, they just are not really attempting to establish them as any archetype. Like they're not, and weirdly they're too broad, but also not broad enough because they're like big, but I don't know what they're trying to be as big.
Yeah, and honestly, that his second appearance on Pete Holmes' podcast, foreshadowing for next week, because that's the Pete Holmes cameo episode. But it's almost like an autopsy on what went wrong with this show.
Yeah.
And I think I said this last week, but I still feel this way after watching this episode, is like, the things that you're saying went wrong are not evident in the show even. He was like, it was too weird, like, ghosts are real. Ghosts are not real. Like, clearly in the show, the ghosts are not real.
Right, so, you don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's very odd. It feels like it was like, maybe...
I mean, there's stuff in this, too, that just seems... Like, we talked about it last week where it seemed like two different groups of writers were writing the episode and they didn't know what was going on. Like, they talk about how, like, they bring up how they've known each other for 8 years, like, repeatedly. But then they say sophomore year. So, like, just basic math there, it makes you 27. Or probably younger than that, because you probably knew each other starting in college. You're 26. But repeatedly in the first episode, you talk about how you're almost 30, you know? So it's like, that's just, like, basic math. Like, just say we've known each other 12 years. That's it doesn't change anything, but for some reason, no one was thinking about that, you know? Like,
there's Andre was their script supervisor, so...
Yeah, exactly. And, like, it doesn't matter, because that's not what a sitcom is about, but it just, if you're going to repeatedly bring up numbers, I'm going to think about what those numbers mean, and I'm going to say, hey, that doesn't make any sense, you know? Just don't talk about it then. Just be like, we've been good friends for a while. No one's going to question that.
It's like we did an American history show where we list off in the finale of the show, we list off future dates, and initially they weren't in chronological order, but we were like, okay, well, let's just put them in chronological order. And so it's just literally that simple of just making a choice and just calling it. Like, John is 30. They've known each other for 9 years, 10 years. Like, it would make more sense. It just doesn't.
I wonder whether part of it is like, because maybe by 4 episodes in, they were already getting response from, like, an audience and critics, so they were, like, writing in regards to that. But, like, I wonder whether part of it was just everyone was like, how does Jay know these people? You know, like, they make zero sense, so they were just like, no, they're, like, best friends since college. That's why she's there. You know, like, they just had to throw that in. It's like, it makes, even though Motif is just insane, and I don't know what he is, at least you could just explain, like, he's a comic, John's a comic, that's how they know each other. Good, I accept that. But then Jane's just this woman, and they're like, no, because college, they're best friends. They're in love, is what this episode's about. So then John is dating a woman. He wants to introduce her to Jane.
He just seems so disappointed. So I guess.
Well, so this is the opening bit. Motif is introduced to Friends, the television show.
He thinks it's the news. Like, is this the news? Okay, so the woman is crazy and the black guy is stupid. What are we doing, guys?
Yeah. Because you could do a thing, because I've seen that bit before. That's kind of what that, like, fucking, the Jay-Z music video was, where they had the recreate of the thing. Where it's like, you could just do, it's like, oh, you mean white living single? You know, like, make him not an idiot, you know? Just make him, like, be like, this is a different
I was waiting for that.
Right, that's the punchline. That's the normal punchline. But then they're just like, no, he's a crazy person. Like, he's a violent schizophrenic who doesn't know what the world is.
Right. He thinks it's the news, and I don't know. Yeah, I was waiting for the living single joke, because it's just like, he's like, oh no, like, they don't even have a conversation about, like, the shows Motif grew up watching versus what John grew up watching.
Yeah.
Motif just doesn't really know anything.
He doesn't know anything at all. Yeah.
He doesn't even know what sitcoms are. He's on one, but he doesn't know what they are because he thinks it's the news. A bunch of white people sitting in a coffee shop is the news. That's what we're meant to believe this man really believes.
Well, I mean, on one level you could be like, oh, that's commentary, but it's just so stupid it doesn't even work as a joke on any level.
And this, like, opening scene with all of them in the apartment, John's acting is so bad.
So bad. Oh,
he must have his
dude.
Script, like, pasted on props around the scene, the way he's just stiltedly just saying
and
lines.
that he doesn't know how to walk. Like, this set feels like he was just dropped onto it, despite the fact that they must have been shooting for at least a month and a half by this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it feels like they have no, like, when I heard Louis talk about doing Horace and Pete, they would, like, practice on the set and all this stuff, and it feels like they just got there and then they shot it and, like, tried to have an idea of what it would be like, as opposed to doing something
it seems very rushed and poorly planned, like, in the way that a lot of the scripts feel like there's padded out material. But, like, it just seems like that couldn't have been what was going on, you know?
No.
Like, they must have been, like, they must have had ample time, both in the writer's room and outside. Like,
and money.
What else was... And money. Like, what was preventing you from making this better?
Imagine fighting for this. Like, you're like, we gotta make this show.
Yeah.
It's like, this show is horrible, man.
But you know what? I mean, I have not ever been in a writer's room on that level of production. So I don't even mean to... maybe it's coming off as naive. Maybe it is genuinely, like, you know, you hear stories about, like, Community or whatever, about, like, they're sending in pages at, like, the last minute. So maybe it was something like that. Like, and just making TV in general is hard, and even the worst thing on television was still a battle to get seen. It's just that it's not a victory when it does, you know?
Right. I was reading this essay, not to go on a big tangent, but I was reading this essay where the author is talking. It was in the 90s. It was in 1990. And he was talking about how fiction, writing, and short stories and books are being too influenced by television because, like, writers find it too easy and convenient to see that as their voyeurism. So all of the cliches that are getting into fiction are based on cliches from television and not based on real people's interactions in the world and the way real people act. And this show feels like it's like based on someone's idea of television, but the television they grew up watching was like television based on television based on television. It's
right.
like a
It's
copy
so
of a copy of a
layers
copy
of
of a copy that you can't
Yeah.
even see it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, that's just what it makes me think of sometimes. That it's like, it's an idea of a show that's being like so meta weirdness, and like you just feel like you can, like, it's like you can see the writers off the stage being like, no, try this, like, let's get it going, like, let's figure it out.
Well,
like,
it is funny because it's like the trappings of it are such that every so often you can see a meta thing. Like, there's a point in this where John gets in a fight with his girlfriend and she goes, "I defend you when people call you a Seinfeld ripoff," and it's like, were they talking about the show? Because like
Right.
I don't remember that being that much of a commentary about Mulaney the stand-up, about he was like a Seinfeld ripoff, you know? Like,
Right.
but people certainly said it about Mulaney the show, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, it just seems like one of a meta on a level where I was like, it just seems like you don't even get it because everything else in the show seems so aggressively unsubversive, you know?
Yeah. And then we get to Luke Cannon, which I think Luke Cannon in this first scene in this episode, he's wearing an incredible shirt. His shirt is incredible. It looks like when you're a child at a pool and you lay at the bottom of the pool and you look up and it's all these like weird blue swirls.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And I think this is a great scene. The last word conversation is funny. It's some of the best acting. It's so weird because John acts so poorly in the first one but ends up like grooving with Martin Short in this scene in a way that I find to be really funny. And like the audience even seems to be into it because Martin Short has to pause to say his next line because the audience is laughing so loud, which is honestly like an interesting moment because it's like, oh, I didn't even, like, you don't really see that on Big Bang Theory. You know, they're kind of like editing and keeping it close and keeping it all tight and good together. But the fact that Martin Short can't say a line because his next line, because the joke he just did was so funny that the audience was laughing and interrupting him. And you see him like pause. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is like the best scene of the show so far.
Yeah, it's a moment that reminds you of what live audiences could actually bring to television, you know, and what they actually what the purpose of them was initially, you know. It was to like recreate the idea of like we're all watching something together, like theater, you know. And so obviously the guy who's best at it was the theater performer, but for some reason the woman who was on Saturday Night Live cannot figure it out, you know. She was a cast member, like.
And again, I think this show should have just been all A plots are about John and Martin Short. It's just every A plot needs to be about John and Martin Short. They have a good new kind of
He's
dynamic.
the only one who's they're coming up with interesting material for every week, and maybe it's just because he can act, you know. So they know he can pull it off.
It's like they tried to do Friends at John's home life and like the workplace sitcoms of like news radio or whatever the other ones are. There's the one with the woman who literally works on the news too. I don't remember
Murphy
what that
Brown.
one's called. Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's like you just do Murphy Brown or you do Friends, but the Friends stuff doesn't work. So just do Murphy Brown.
Right.
Just do
the
a
Friends
comedy
stuff is,
writer
like,
sitcom.
really doesn't. Yeah, you need chemistry with people, like, and it just that's what you need a sitcom on. That's the only way to make a sitcom is to have chemistry between the characters.
John should
also,
live
like,
with Oscar and work with Martin Short, and that's the whole show. That should be the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I like these actors. I think they're doing I mean, I don't know if I like these actors. I'm just being like cold.
In this, yeah, I'm sure they could be good in something else.
Yeah, like Jasine Pedrad's like great on SNL. She does a great Aziz.
Yeah, she does great Aziz.
I've never seen Seton Smith. Otherwise, I don't know what he's
She's
from.
good on New Girl, which is a sitcom, single cam. So maybe that's part of it. But still, like she can act in this style, you know.
Yeah.
What else is going on? Oh,
so after the Martin Short
yeah.
scene, he does a stand-up bit where he changes the name of his parents in the bit from what he does on the special.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Well, yeah, but he says Chip and something. So
Chip and Ellen.
Right. I think Chip is just a nickname for Charles.
Right, but that's not the bit that he does when he recorded it. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Her name is really Ellen, but I just think it's funny that John's dad the idea that John's dad wants nothing to do with the show, and he has to use like a nickname for Charles.
Yeah.
Like he's like, do not use my name.
Yeah. Well, he talks about, I think in the Marin interview, he's like, when the first reviews came out, he like called his mom and I'm like, I'm sorry that these are so bad and it's your last name too. Like this is everyone is hating, which makes you think like, oh yeah, like obviously your mom is gonna like console you, but when it's her name as well, and she's like, Mulaney sucks. You're like, oh god, my mom's gonna see this.
This is such a tangent. What happens next in this
I just saw this. I just looked at my notes and at one point I just read, they're all so bad. They're such bad actors. Everyone is so bad.
I have notes like that too. I'm like, what? Sometimes it just says what. Like,
okay, so then they're at the cellar.
Because John's girlfriend is going to meet Jane, right. And Jane is mean to his girlfriend.
That's the cellar? That's not what the cellar looks like, or I guess backstage, but like...
They're in what I assume is a fictional green room of the Comedy Cellar.
Right, but they specifically say the cellar, right?
Yes. There's no green room at the Comedy Cellar. It's a table in the back room. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't know everything about the Comedy Cellar, so I've never been there. I know there's a tunnel that goes between the two clubs, but...
and then we get a Seinfeld bit where Jane is like she only dates comics. She's a ha ha ho, which I don't mind. I think that's a funny. I mean, the actual term for those who don't know is chuckle fucker, but obviously they can say that on network television.
I like ha ha ho as well.
Ha ha ho is good, yeah. And then they repeat it because you do that so you get everyone to be like yada yada yada, and then that's how you get $1 billion and get to make a movie about Pop-Tarts 20 years later.
Can I say something? When your girlfriend meets your friends or a girl it's mostly when it's a girl you're casually dating. Like this happened to me in college at least once or twice. This is how girls act though. They really don't like if you have a friend and she's a girl and she meets your girlfriend, she's like, I'm gonna sabotage, and they don't even want to date you. So I think like they will just try to ruin it because they just don't like you hanging out.
I told you about something that happened to me recently.
And that's all you're gonna say.
Well, I don't know.
Well, what else? You bring that up? What
as I was saying it, I was like, I don't want this story out there, but I just remembered like, oh, I told James about it.
Like, what could you say at this point? I mean, there's only one person who will listen to the podcast.
There'd be a bunch of people who listens to this.
No, I like ha ha ho. I think that's funny. Motif has great pants. That's one of my notes. So I'm really focusing on the clothing
of this episode, yeah. Whoever dressed them clearly did a good job.
Motif had great pants. And Oscar had a good shirt. The clothes are great in this episode.
Right.
That's one of my notes.
So then he meets Oscar, and then he meets Oscar's two friends.
Who's the other lady? So there's Oscar has two ladies hanging out in his apartment. They are
It's Lorraine Bracco from Goodfellas and Sopranos. And Penny Marshall.
I don't know who Penny Marshall is.
She's the director. She did Big...
okay. Good
she's
to know.
Who is she? She Rob Reiner's one-time ex-wife.
That's a credit?
No, I mean I don't know. At one point, so then in the next scene, John is so then John is helping Lou because he's worried about dying on the toilet. And at one point he goes, I don't want to do this. This isn't my job. And I'm like, what is your job, John? Because, like, is it to write jokes? Because there's other writers on the staff. It seems like you're just his personal assistant, in which case it kind of is your job to just hang out with him. That is basically what the job description is.
Yeah. So, like this job is going to take up so much of my time.
Yeah.
It's like, you took it. You could quit.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, you can make a joke about how what your job is doesn't make sense, because they do that with the TV show. You know, they do that with the game show, but like, what are the rules for this game again? And they're like, I don't know. That's the joke. That's the running gag. So you can do a thing where people are like, John, what is your job title? And you're like, like, you can do that, and then you can have fun with it and be like, oh, I don't actually know what's in my job description, do whatever. But that's not what they're doing. So clearly, as an audience, we're supposed to be like, oh, John really wants to be a writer, but he keeps getting roped in to Lou Cannon's crazy ideas. And it's like, but is that... I thought from the very beginning it seemed like that's all they did was hang out with each other. So maybe it is just you're never setting these rules of what your characters or worlds are, and so then you try to subvert them, but it doesn't make any sense because I don't know what you're subverting.
Yeah, like they want us to like get a peek into the life of a comedian while they also at the same time don't explain other things and explain certain things. So it's like, You know what? It'd be insanely beneficial to John's comedy career that he's with a famous comedian legend in the scene, and maybe that could help him do something. But I don't think anyone who watches the show is really going to know that could probably be a big, like, having the credit of writing on the show. He's performing at the Cellar. Like, these things aren't even given stakes. So you don't really know. Like, John seems like both a loser and successful.
Right.
Like, he's like a
also,
successful
does
loser.
he, is, like, I mean, not to go back to something as basic as, like, what does the character want, but, like, in the pilot, it was kind of established, like, oh, you know, I've never gotten a job in TV. Like, I want my parents to see my jokes on TV. Like, okay. But, like, since then, it's like, are we hit it? Like, are you good, John? Like, do you want to be more famous? Like, do you want, what do you want? Like, I genuinely don't know what any of these characters want.
No, I don't know either. And I think it's like the show about nothing. It's like they don't really want anything. They're just kind of hanging out, but you have to establish some stuff. But it's like...
But they don't even do that, yeah.
Because they all work in entertainment, it's odd. It's like, or not Jane, but like everyone's working in the entertainment industry, which is like, you have to be insanely ambitious and working constantly. So to have this like blasé attitude, like, oh, I don't know, I'm just a comedian. It's like, no, you would be doing this every night. It consumes most of your time. Takes you away from your ha-ha-ho.
Yeah. Yeah, and hence they broke. So then, I wrote this at one point too, that John does not have a good gym face, where there's like a lot of moments where he's like, reacting not to the camera but like being like, can you believe this? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't like that expression. I think you got to workshop that.
Andre is the frontman of a blues band,
right? So John realizes that what's Oscar's two female friends who hated each other found something that they both hated, and that's how they became friends. So John says, let's bring my girlfriend and Jane.
This is like how you explain interception to a child. So they're in a dream. And
then there was another dream. So John brings Jane and his girlfriend, whose name I can't remember, to Andre's White Man Blues show, because they'll both hate it. And then John's girlfriend...
It's not called the White Man Blues.
No, but that's the joke they make.
Yeah, but then the blues band is two black guys and Andre, which is
even crazier. Yeah, this shows there's a whole like hour-long video essay where you could make about the way Mulaney, the sitcom, tackles race. You just keep like cutting in clips of Anthony Jeselnik, like that one time roasting him about using black voices. You're like, what does John Mulaney think about black people? You know? And then you end it with Dave Chappelle accepting his like Emmy, being like, Brother Mulaney, you know? We could make this, it'd be terrible, but we'd get like 100,000 views, I think.
Oh my god. Yeah, we should get Spike Lee to direct John Mulaney's life story.
That would be good. That would be actually funny.
That'd be pretty funny. So Andre's the frontman of a blues band with two old black men. And the whole joke of it is like, we don't want to go to a white guy blues show. But like the visual gag that they never explain or ponder on for a minute, it was very funny to me that he's like, who are these old black guys that were like, I'm down with Andre.
These clearly like these talented musicians from the Delta Blues who have adopted Andre as their frontman.
Yeah.
So then John's girlfriend makes fun of it, and John's like, yeah. And then Jane is like, hey, don't make fun of Andre. And then John's like, what? And again, I don't get what this means, because it's like, does Jane genuinely, is she just mad at the girlfriend for, is it like, I can make fun of my friends, but you can't? But it's like, that's not how have established the Andre character. The Andre character is not even like, I hate you, but whatever. It's like, they despise this guy.
Yeah.
They hate every aspect of it.
I think it's meant to be like, Jane is showing her hand by John knows she hates Andre. He tried to do something that was a clear setup win for them to both hate something. Yeah. And then Jane decides to defend it, because Jane is just, well, no matter what the girlfriend says, she's not on her side.
Right. I guess it's fair. It's just weird. Like it just didn't fully read to me. And then
the girlfriend's like, I you didn't defend me to Jane. I defend you when people say you're a Seinfeld ripoff, which to me sounded exactly like when Troy Bond called himself long-haired Pete Davidson. Because it's not funny,
but worse. Keep that in there?
Yeah, of course. What's he gonna do? Like, take me out?
No, yeah.
It's not funny, but worse, it's not even accurate.
Right. Right, because especially in the show, like the stand-up we've seen in the show, it's like, what is happening? No one's ever said that about you. They said that about the television show.
John and Jane do do like they sit down and they finally like hash it out and talk. And Jane
talk about their feelings for each other. Yeah.
And Jane goes, "Oh no! Before Jane leaves the blues show, they don't do their talk yet."
John is like, "I bet you're jealous," and she's like, "Yeah." And then she goes, they keep writing these long monologues for Jane to like that are supposed to be like comedic showcases for her, but she just keeps not being able to pull it off. Also, the writing is bad, but in both of it, it's like the way maybe Marty could have pulled it off, but she's just not doing it. She's doing this weird thing about what fucking John Mulaney would be like. And,
and eating cold chicken.
Right, and the punchline is John being like, "Those were a lot of lucky guesses," but I'm watching that and I'm thinking like, you've clearly thought about fucking him a lot, because like no one would have been able to come up with all of that just off the top of their head, you know?
Yeah, and I don't even think they realize that that's the joke that they set up, is that she clearly does want him in some capacity, because she's like trying to disgust herself by describing it, but she clearly talks about it. And she does this thing which is like, we didn't have to do. She goes, "You think I'm jealous of her with you?" And
sexually.
It's like, delete it.
You're like, no, this is not like, it's the...
This is iCarly. Like,
it's very... You remember the Family Guy bit where Brian has a TV show and it gets turned into this really broad sitcom, and then the joke there is James Wood is like, he walks into his daughter and he's like, "You're my new roommate?" And it's like, "We're in college together with my pet monkey?" Like, that's the vibe it gave.
Yeah,
but that was making fun of broad multicams, and this is a broad multicam, but it's not. But you're supposed to actually laugh at it.
So Jane storms out, and my only thought after the end of this show scene at Andre's blues show is screaming at a lights on blues venue.
Yeah, lights on. That looks like an art gallery. Like, this is.
I thought it was an art gallery.
They couldn't find any other set, you know?
Yeah. But that's the New York experience. Screaming at a show with two women with the lights on, and you're like, "Why did I come here?"
Yeah.
That's what.
And not getting laid by either of them.
No.
Going home alone.
So they go to
John
Lou's
goes back
apartment.
to Lou's place, and
I'm impressed he can carry Lou. I was actually kind of impressed.
I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, man, you go packing something, Mulaney.
They're like practicing with Lou. The whole episode, Lou's worried about like what his last words are going to be. And he doesn't want to die in an embarrassing way, and so they're like practicing if Lou dies on the toilet, like John's going to have to pick him up and take him out of the bathroom. And I was like, he's not holding him for a long time.
Yeah. And they probably did. Well, maybe they didn't do more than one take. We've talked about that a lot. Where it just feels like everything was first take, best take.
The underwear that Lou is wearing when John is holding him matches his shirt from earlier. Yeah. That's not a visual gag, but it is funny that he has underwear and dress shirts that match.
And then John's girlfriend comes to apologize, and he's like, "Wait, did you follow me to my boss's place?" And then it's revealed that she just really wants to fuck Lou Cannon, and it's like, oh, she's a ha ha ha, or what's the other one? A funny honey was what Lou says, which is less... it's less good. I can see where that was the second one they wrote.
Do you know any other good ones? Like, we know Chuckle Fucker. They do Ha Ha Ho, Funny Honey. I put Comedy Store Whore. Busted Gut Slut.
Busted Gut Slut is great.
And I'm going to delete this one, but I put Olivia Munn.
Yeah, no, you should keep that in.
Okay, I'll keep it. There's so much I have to delete out of this episode.
So then, it doesn't matter. So then John goes back to his apartment and Jane's there, and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry. You're right." Yeah.
But Jane is like, "I'm not jealous. You're just my backup plan."
Right. Which is like a Chandler and Monica thing. Like, they did that before they got together. Like they had that joke. It keeps brushing up against this line of, it's like, if you want to be Seinfeld, then you can't have sincerity. And so, but then they do have sincerity, but then they remember it's like, oh, we want to be Seinfeld. So they have Jane talk about how she feels about John, but they do it in the removed fashion of like, oh, you're my backup plan. I would love to go out. But even that just seems legitimately sweet in a way of, it's like, I love you, in this regard. So then it still doesn't really it's like, I don't know what these characters are. Am I supposed to think of them as real people or just saying psychopaths, Like, are they Seinfeld? Are they It's Always Sunny? Or are they fucking Leave It to Beaver? Like, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I think that I think they thread a needle. I don't know if it's a needle that I would have chose to thread in this scene, but they like allow there to be an opening. Like Jane is clearly like, I'm not completely disgusted by the idea of being with John, but we will not do that at this time.
Yeah.
And they sort of push that away, and it's like, I wasn't worried. You didn't have to extinguish my curiosity if Jane and John have a romantic interest, but you are the one that set it up. Like the show is the one.
The other thing too is it's the repeated issue of them continually adding in sitcom elements like tropes, but doing it in such a way that it just feels rote and it just feels like tossed in without any thought given to it. And they're like, well, we have a man, we have a woman that are two lead characters, so I guess we gotta deal with the elephant in the room. Clearly there's sexual tension, and it's like, there's no tension, there's no chemistry by any of it. First, make them seem like they've actually known each other for more than a week, and then we could talk about like, you know, romance and stuff, you know?
There's no tension. Only one of them can act. So the other one is just reading jokes off a teleprompter. Like,
one of them is trying to remember his stand-up bits.
Yeah. I mean, this episode was fine. It's definitely... I know you said it was, like, one of the worst ones for you. For me, I felt like it was okay. Like, I'm like, at least they're, like... This feels like a rhythm now. You get a couple of jokes. Oh, there Motif is still confusing. Like, he sees the end of Friends, and it seems like the joke is like... I mean, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it seems like the end of Motif's Friends thing is that he's sad, but they're playing it like he thinks the ending was bad.
Right. It doesn't really read. If it was Seinfeld, that would have been fun. Because I actually remember I had a roommate, like sophomore year of college, who got really into Seinfeld. He had never seen it before and was watching all of it. And he would like do the Kramer walk like into our apartment and stuff. And then like he was so into it. And then he got to the ending and he just like sadly walked in one day and was like, that's the ending of Seinfeld? And it reminded me exactly of that, because Seinfeld had like a famously disappointing ending. But fucking Friends, it's like, it's fine, you know? It's like, they get together. It's the same show as it always was.
For me, I don't think Seinfeld really ended until he got on stage at the Laugh Factory. That's when Seinfeld ended.
That's the real ending. I think this is also the second time we brought up Michael Richards' famously racist rates on the podcast. I wanted to say one thing was they do a joke of it's like a throwaway of where Lou is like I had just gotten finished playing Scarecrow in the all-white version of The Wiz, and I'm like, that's a Mulaney joke, you know? Like, that's a joke that works in the context of, you know, like I could almost see that as like a Stefan bit, you know? It's like, you know, and in this club has everything, an all-white version of The Wiz, you know? And like, but it works in the context of Lou being crazy. Lou Cannon, washed-up television hosts, you know? Former New York Giants running back Tiki Barber.
Yeah. My friend. I think I wrote that joke down too.
And I was like, I like that joke a lot. I wish that they had found ways to, because Lou is the character that makes the most. He's like he's a figure of like old school pop culture, which Mulaney clearly loves. And he's able to just deliver these, and also as an actor, Martin Short's the best one. This show has turned my opinion around on Martin Short. I kind of used to find him really smarmy and couldn't really like him, and I'm like, you're the best thing about this show, Marty. Like, you really know what you're doing.
It's like when a hot girl hangs out with ugly girls to be more attractive.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's like, you know, I didn't really think you were that hot, and then I saw your friends. So then, and then the show ends. But I think my issue with it is that
so little to say.
We still recorded for like 40 minutes. Like it does. We're brushing up against the limitations of this exercise because it's like. Because there's no forward momentum on the show's part to seemingly get better. If the show was changing, if it was getting worse, but in ways that like were weird, or if it was getting better in ways that are weird, I'd at least get it. But now it just seems like it's the same dirge every week, and I'm like, were you proud in the moment, like in the scripts? Was there ever like a first draft where you were like, yeah, this is good, and the studio ruined it, or like we didn't have the budget, or whatever, you know?
I've realized that this podcast is performance art. It's actually not a podcast. It's not a Rewatch podcast. Also, we changed the name after the first 2 episodes.
That's fine. I don't care. It should be.
This is an exercise. The idea at the end of it, when they're all together, is when it will be funny.
The fact that we did this It's only funny that it's like when that guy like nailed himself to a Volkswagen Beetle, you know, like he crucified himself, and like in the moment it's like, why am I doing this? And then afterwards you're like, oh, that's pretty cool that you did that.
Yeah, exactly. People are gonna think it's so cool that we talked longer than the episode.
Yeah, double the length of the episode. Most of it is just us doing references to half-remembered bar shows from 2021.
I'm keeping that in. I don't care.
No, keep it in. I don't care.
He's not gonna watch this. And what is he gonna do? Ruin my career? He's gonna get my Instagram shut down? Fuck you. Look at that.